great to have you back on the show.
Yeah,
here.
thanks. Good to be here.
So, another thing that I think is interesting about what you've been talking about on your podcast, which, by the way, I definitely highly recommend. I'm going to talk about it in the intro, but startup to something.
Startup to last. Yes.
It's definitely one of my favorite bootstrapper podcasts.
Thank you.
So you guys
Appreciate
really get
that.
into like the nitty gritty, which is good. So one thing that I want to talk to you just in general about building a team as a software company. We got into it a little bit in the last episode, but I think we're actually like total opposites in a bunch of ways when it comes to our teams, But this is the first time that I'm starting to really grow like a software focused company. All my stuff before has been like a productized service, and like I come from the world of have always been 100% remote. Like even today, our small team on Zip Message, we are literally in 5 different continents.
Yeah,
now,
that's wild. That's awesome.
But in audience ops, actually most of the team, we were like 25 people. Almost all of them were US based, but all remote. But I always lean heavily on contractors. Even like what you might consider like close to like part-time employees, but like they're contractors and they are like decidedly like I'm a freelancer, but I want a couple of really good retainers that are just long-term, and that seemed to work well. But why don't we start off like what's the makeup of your team these days?
Yeah, so we're 19 people plus we do have one contractor, but that's because we tried to hire her full-time and she didn't want to. So she kind of had all the onboarding of a full-time employee. So you can kind of think of it like 20. And yeah, the team is, I want to say something like 8 CRM coaches or customer service people, 8 coders, me, sales biz dev person, and a marketing person. So it's not like the normal breakdown you'd normally, if you go on other companies' websites and like see who they've got, it's like half marketing and sales normally. So we're way under invested in that, but over invested in customer service probably.
And then the other thing I want to get into here as we go along is what do you call it? Is it like an apprenticeship program or intern?
Yeah, we call it a coding fellowship, which is not a very self-evident name, but we wanted it to look fancy on a resume so that people would be inclined to apply for it, basically.
And so those are those like paid
yeah.
What's the breakdown there?
Yeah, so we've done a lot of internships in the past, and internships are great, but the problem is like for someone to get to the point where they can get an internship as, say, a software engineer, they already have to overcome a lot of hurdles, which are, it's easier for, people from certain backgrounds to achieve that than others. So we kind of wanted to say, well, how do we hire a more diverse group of people if every single like college junior majoring in computer science, not every single one, but the vast, vast majority all kind of share similar backgrounds. And so the coding fellowship is basically what if you had something for the year before an internship? So for someone who knows they want to get into tech, they haven't quite figured out how to overcome those hurdles yet, and we're just kind of the stepping stone for them to get an internship the next year. And so it is paid, but they're not working for us. It's about them learning and building an app
like
for
observing,
themselves.
Shadowing.
Yeah, so there's a lot of like curriculum to it. There's like lessons and stuff, but then they also everyone picks their own project, and we help them build it.
That's super cool. I want to come back to that in just a minute. But just let's just stick with like generally like building a team around a software company. So you guys have been around for like over 10 years. And is your entire team local? You're in St. Louis, right?
St. Louis, yeah. So I was in San Francisco, and my brother, who's the other co-founder, was in Boston. And then we hired a few people remotely. So we actually started out fully remote. And then this goes against
your brother like in the business like day to day with you?
Yeah, he's not like in a people management role. He's an individual contributor, but yeah, he's full-time DevOps person.
Oh, awesome. And he's technical.
Yes, yeah. So I was kind of we're like really misaligned for what you'd want founders to be. Like I'm a software engineer by trade, and I'm the less technical one. So we basically have nothing on the sales, marketing, all that stuff. We've got no expertise in.
That would be super cool to be in a business with my brother. But he and I professionally are complete polar opposites.
How so?
Like I'm on the internet building software. My brother runs a farm. He has 40 cows. They do milking and yogurt and cheese, and yeah, he's
okay,
getting his hands dirty.
But hear me out here. My dream has always been not like my one ultimate dream, but something I've always wanted to do is find. We talked about this a bit in the last episode, like a domain expert who knows this thing that software engineers know nothing about. I bet he could tell you. He could give you some pretty interesting insights about software or technology that farmers could use.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, talk about it like a niche. I mean,
yeah,
that's
actually,
there's plenty of stuff.
My cousin-in-law builds software for farmers, and yeah, it sounds like a nice niche to be in, actually. Anyway, I realize that's
the
bit
only
of a
thing
tangent.
is, like, most farmers are like dead broke. But...
yeah, true.
But the okay, so the decision. So it started out just you and your brother building.
Yeah, just built it, and we both kind of did a little marketing. I did more than he did, but we just kind of grew it to the point where we could afford to start hiring people. Brought on a customer service person to free up our time, and then grew from there.
Well, so I've been self-employed since 2008, and I've been hiring remotely since the very beginning. In the early days, I was doing web design consulting, hiring out other freelancers, and then all the different startups over the years. Always hired, like, I've been 100% remote. I've never had a coworker, employee, contractor, local in my office. And early on, and this is still the case today, 13 years later, as a bootstrapper. Today I'm mostly bootstrapped, but it always starts with a money thing. Like, it's just more cost efficient to hire remotely. Like, yes, overseas, of course, but then even in the U.S. I mean, I live in Connecticut. A lot of what made audience ops work so well was like hiring writers in the Midwest, where living is a lot less than where I'm at. I mean,
I hear you. I think that's especially has to be a part of a services business, because with a service business, the hours put in, like, you have to charge the customer more than you're paying the employee, and there's a very one-to-one map for that. With software, I don't think that has to be as true. Like, the value you can get from one employee is basically unlimited. I mean, practically speaking, it is limited, but it's not like they put in an hour of time, I can bill for an hour of time type of thing.
Yeah. So like but even like thinking like the early days of Less Annoying, like how large did you grow when you were at the point like we could take on did you start with a full-time salary? Did you start with a part-time person? Like, what did that look like? Yeah,
I want to be clear that like where we are now is due to a lack of creativity, not like this was not some grand plan. Basically, we made up enough. We'd gotten enough revenue that either Bracken, my brother, or I could go full time. And we were talking like, is it going to be you? Is it going to be me? What are we going to do here? And then I forget who suggested, but someone was like, we're both pretty comfortable like making enough to get by and working on the side. What if we just hired somebody else? So it was very much like the tail wagging the dog here, where we're like, well, someone's getting a full time salary. Which of us is it going to be? And then it ended up being a friend of mine, Michael, who came on as our first employee.
Oh, okay. So you started paying them like before you started like paying yourselves?
I was getting some, but yeah, not a full time. Our first full time employee was neither of the founders.
Yeah, very cool.
Which I'm not sure I would plan, and that kind of like informed a lot of other stuff where a lot of. I don't know. I kind of feel like you can't plan everything. Like the culture sort of took over from there. Like, why are we in St. Louis? Because after we'd hired 3 or 4 people, they were like, I don't want to work remotely, which goes against every narrative, right? That everybody wants to. And so we're like, well, we can't hire in the Bay Area. Like, bootstrapping in San Francisco is an absolutely stupid idea. So we got to move somewhere cheap. And so we moved to St. Louis.
Oh, really? So that's how. So you're not from St. Louis?
I am from St. Louis, but I was not planning on moving back. Aside from that, like it was time to grow the team.
Huh. And the people that you had at the time, did they move for that, or were they already in St. Louis?
So we basically said anyone who was hired as a remote person, we don't want to like bait and switch you, so you can stay remote if you want, or you can move. So 2 people moved to St. Louis, 3 people stayed remote. Of those 3, Bracken is the only one still with the company. And a big part of that is like, even if you love remote work, I think it's not great being one of the few remote workers at a company that's mostly in person.
Yeah, yeah, I could see that. And so it was like a conscious decision, clearly, like early on, like, okay, we will need to grow the team as time goes on. Let's just decide to grow it in this city.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, we put a lot, and it's not like we just said, well, we're leaving San Francisco, let's go to St. Louis. We looked at a lot of cities and thought pretty deeply about it, and it was a combination of like low cost of living, but every city or a lot of cities have that. But it was like, what cities have a low cost of living, the right culture for customer service, because customer service is super undervalued in most tech hubs. And then the final thing was like, where do you what's the pool you recruit from? And there are only a few mid-sized cities in the country with top-tier universities, and St. Louis is one of them. So we were basically deciding between St. Louis, kind of the Raleigh-Durham area, Pittsburgh, Nashville, I think, Baltimore maybe.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. Like the other thing that I'm like always jealous of friends who have successful SaaS with large teams is the in-person like camaraderie, and I hear you talking about doing these like office parties and stuff, and like before 2008 I was employed at a very small web design shop in New York City, and I used to love like hanging out in person and getting beers with coworkers and doing things like that. And even a lot of our folks in our industries who are fully remote, they do the retreat thing. They fly everyone into a fun location, and you do that a couple of times a year. And it's one of my dreams. I would love to grow ZipMessage to a point where we can do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But like the reality is like we are so far away from that, like financially, like being viable, that and I used to think there was a time not long ago, like in the early days of ZipMessage, where I was like, if I'm going to start to grow the team, let's try to be close in time zones for logistics, but also like I would love to fly everyone or travel everyone to a certain location and hang out a few times a year. But then ultimately for me, that like take the financial stuff out of the picture, going remote. I'm curious how you think about this. Like it's so much more about the pool of talent out there. I mean, being able to open it up worldwide or like at least nationwide, I mean, to me that's like a huge advantage. Not that in-person companies can't overcome it, but like just like you know, for example, like Claire, our marketing coordinator, I've had so many, like in the last episode we were talking about marketing and how it's so hard and even so hard to hire for it. That's one of the hardest things about marketing is hiring people, because there are so many quote unquote marketers who you can't like review their code or their design portfolio to know if they're good or not, you know? And she was like, out of all the applicants that I've had, like she was the only one who I sort of know and I've worked with and I know is a great fit, except she's in Australia.
Right.
You know? So it's like, that kind of is difficult. We work around it because we're fully async, but like, you know, she's just the best person available. Like there are no other options. So it's
yeah. I have a lot of thoughts on this. I mean, first of all, being in a city like St. Louis, you have to acknowledge we are not going to be able to hire domain experts if we have this in-person requirement. We have to train people up, which is easy-ish for customer service and software engineering because, like, we know how to do those really well. One of the reasons I said we're so understaffed on marketing and sales is, like, we don't have anyone with that expertise to then go out and hire and train an entry-level person. So it is tough. Instead, you could be based in New York or San Francisco and just hire people there, but of course, it's much more competitive. In terms of you're definitely missing out on a ton of talent by... Even if it is New York or whatever, like a huge market, you're missing out on the rest of the world. But I mean, there's a pretty clear parallel, I think, with how bootstrapped businesses think about the whole business model, which is like, we're going to find a niche and we're going to own that niche instead of trying to play the same game that everybody else does and go mass market. Like, yes, you can hire anyone in the world, but also you're competing with every company in the world. There are some people in St. Louis who want to work at a good tech company and want to work in person, and there are very few options for them. and
Yeah.
we kind of own that. I shouldn't say we own that market. We're still a small fish even by St. Louis standards, but like there's a lot less competition if you just focus on those people.
I could see that. I mean, and I'm seeing this interesting. I'm sure you see it too. Since pandemic times, I'm just seeing a lot more people applying for roles, especially marketing roles, because they're trying to leave a career as a teacher or leave a career in some corporate job to try to find an internet-based startup that has the right that has a role with the same skill sets, even though it's completely different. It's an opportunity for them to work remotely. Like I see a lot of that in my applications inbox all the time.
Yep.
But I wonder if there's also this but the thing is the people who are, even if they have the right talent and skills, they're not necessarily remote working people. Like that's a certain style of professional to be comfortable and actually thrive as a remote worker and asynchronous worker too. I find
yeah, if
you need to be on calls and meetings and in person, and that's your thing, it's just not going to, it doesn't matter how talented you are, you're just not going to work as a teammate. So I wonder in your case, if there's the opposite effect, right? Like local
100%.
people who just seek out in-person roles, or you seek people out who they don't necessarily have to check the box of being good at remote. They're just great in person.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of people hate remote work. Not the majority. I think I'm talking about a minority, but double-digit percent. We just did a 3-week period. We do this twice a year where 3 weeks at a time it's fully remote, just so people can go travel or whatever. So in August we did that. And one day I remoted in, I joined the video call for our weekly meeting, and 12 people were at the office. And I was like, what is going on here? You don't have to be there. And they're like, well, we wanted to come in today.
Yeah.
There are actually people out there, counter to the narrative, that like that. But yeah, I think you're right. So if I were making this decision, I didn't think this through at the time, but if you're going for the in-person route like we did, you've got to say, well, we need to have a company culture that appeals to those people. It's probably more extroverted people. It's probably, I think a smaller city really helps with this because no one's commute is more than 15 minutes. Whereas in the Bay Area, my friends there, they're like, well, I'm on the bus for an hour and a half every day, both ways. That's why they want to work remote.
Yep. And
then the flip side is if I was building a remote team, I'd probably be it's probably older people who are more established in life. They don't need to make friends and stuff at work. Not old, but married, living in the suburbs type of people are a lot more likely to prefer remote work.
I find anyone with kids, it's a huge benefit to be remote.
Yeah. And probably not coincidental. I think the average age, less annoying, it's still fairly young, but it's probably early 30s, and only 2 people have kids. It's a group that's self-selected into a different lifestyle, living in the city, wanting more social fulfillment out of work than you would get remotely.
Yeah. One thing I've always felt that we miss out on, and maybe this is, it's just not my thing as a leader or a weakness, is building the culture and keeping a strong culture. I felt it in audience ops, and I feel it again in Zip Message now, where it's we're always talking about work. We have a Slack channel. We try to post some photos of our kids and pets and travel stuff when we can. But beyond that, we don't have much culture here. It's just,
is that okay though? I've gone back and forth. Maybe that's fine. Maybe people don't want to get that type of thing from their work.
Yeah, I don't know. I tend to sense, I haven't run a company myself with this, but from everyone that I speak to, probably you included, is you get actual value for the company and for the work by having these friendship relationships grow, right? Or when I think about doing a team retreat in the future, it's not going to be to go work somewhere. It's let's just go somewhere to bring everyone in, and we're all just going to have fun for 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
Just to have that, build it into the relationship,
Yeah. There's definitely some value in that. Yeah. At the same time, there are people out there who, if you go on Hacker News and read the comments, there are people who are give me my commands, I will do them, and we will never talk. And I'm not saying you should every company should not be built around that person, but probably like there should be a company for that person. Like we've had interns in the past who are really, really good that we didn't give offers to. And then when someone would call me and say, hey, can you give a recommendation for this person? I'd say, this person will be great in this environment. And I'm like, is that your environment? Yes or no? I think you just, like everyone just needs to decide what they're trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. Like before we go, I want to hear more about the, now I forgot the name of it. Not the apprenticeship program.
Fellowship.
The fellowship.
Yep.
All right. So like, you described it a little bit early on. Where are you finding these folks, and what I'm curious about is like what goes into the work for you and your employees to take time out of their actual work to show them a thing or two or to teach them and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, let me start by just saying I acknowledge up front that this is not a high ROI activity. And if the reason you're running a business is to maximize shareholder value and exit, you probably shouldn't do this, but that's not my primary driver anymore.
Yeah, but we have the benefit as bootstrappers to do things like this.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. And I get everyone at the company, myself included, gets a ton of fulfillment out of it. So it's worth doing, but it's not for the money. So yeah, where do we find people? Well, the way we structure the program is it's full-time during the summer, like an internship. Very few people who are not current college students can do that. So we've tried looking outside of colleges, but it's like, how many adults with jobs are going to like quit their job for 3 months to do this? Like nobody.
Yeah. Right.
So we've kind of settled on, okay, it's got to be college students. We've dabbled with like what level of experience should they have? We've hired people for this who like literally didn't even own computers and like didn't even know the tech industry was a thing. All the way through computer science majors who just weren't experienced enough yet for an internship. We've had a lot more success with the people who are higher up that ladder. I think entrepreneurs like to tell themselves they can solve all the world's problems sometimes, or at least in San Francisco they do. We found that if someone wasn't already pretty close to being in tech, like one summer is not enough time to change their life. And it all, like they love the summer, they get paid, they learn a lot, but then they just go off, and none of those people ended up in tech anyway. Whereas the people who, like last summer, we had 6 coding fellows. 3 of them coming into the summer said they were majoring in computer science, but they were thinking about dropping out because they were like, I'm not sure this is for me or whatever. At the end of the summer, all 6 said, I know this is for me. I know I can get a job in tech. So that's where the impact is, I think.
That's so cool. Because I think about like back when I was in college, you know, and I jumped around majors a couple times and like, yeah, like, and this is partly a big reason why I'm kind of down on college in general these days. Like when I think about my kids growing up, like, is college really going to be important? And because everything I learned about the web, and I didn't major in web design or computer science or anything like that. Like I did audio production. So then,
yeah.
But then after college, I got an internship at a web design shop, and they paid me for that time. And that took me from amateur to professional, and then I was off and running in that industry from there. Like,
yeah,
like seeing it in real life is like 1,000 times more valuable than hearing about it in a classroom, you know?
Yeah, we have, like, when we hire interns, not even fellows, but like people who pass a real interview, they come in 3 years of college experience, don't know how to use Git, have never gotten a real code review in their life. They have no idea how deployment works. They have no idea how performance of anything works aside from like time complexity in an algorithm. I graduated from Washington University in St. Louis in 2007 with a computer science degree. That's the main school we recruit from now. Mm-hmm. The curriculum has barely changed since 2007.
I bet, yeah. It's like I was talking about Ben Orenstein on this show a couple episodes back about this, and I sometimes regret not getting a CS degree because now I've had to like hack together these back end skills later in my career, which has been fine from a getting to the point of like being able to build a product standpoint. But like I do lack the deep knowledge that a CS degree of like how it works from the inside out. I sort of regret that sometimes, but I can totally see how like our industry just moves so fast.
Yeah.
The tech, like you're just not going to see the real stuff And same is true from the business side too. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Learning how to get customers and all that, like, and hiring, like, you don't learn that in school. You know?
Yeah, a business degree is about how to succeed working at a giant Fortune 500 company. It's not about
like how to work a spreadsheet. Like,
yeah, exactly. If I can give a quick shout out, so because a good chunk of our dev team do not have a traditional background in computer science. There's a book called The Imposter's Handbook, which I don't know if you've heard of it, but a number of people, including our lead developer, who's the strongest developer on the team now, he majored in theater, learned to code at Less Annoying, and then read that book, and it gave him enough of a foundation that when I talk about computer science concepts with him, I don't feel like I know more than he does.
Mm. So, like, what are you guys doing to, like, what types of things would, say, one of your actual engineers do to, like, pull off time and teach one of the apprentices?
Yeah, we're trying to get more structured about this. So we kind of made a commitment as a company. Well, sorry. Historically, the answer has been like, there's no system. Just be reactive, which isn't how anyone should be. But like, if someone needs your time, give it to them.
Or is it sort of like on the apprentice to say, like, look, you're going to get out of this what you want to get out of it. Like, go ask questions, go be curious, poke around, like.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. So I normally run the fellowship, and I'm in the process of kind of gradually transitioning to someone else, where I like teach lessons, help them like structure the summer and stuff like that. And then we pair them with each fellow gets paired with one developer as like their technical mentor. That's the person who's going to be like doing code reviews, helping them troubleshoot, like, hey, I can't figure out how to do this. How do I do this? So it's a combination of like me doing one-to-many communication and project planning, and then each developer has a mentee. And basically, yeah, it's how, if they submit a pull request, review it. If they ask for help, give them help. It's pretty unstructured. We actually
have them like work on like real parts of the app, even though you might not actually merge their stuff into production. Like hack on little features or bugs. And
no, we do not, and they want to, and I think it would be really good for them to. The thing is, I'm not. So it is a discriminatory program in that it's specifically for people from underrepresented groups. I'm not sure of the legality of having like discriminating when hiring someone and then having them do work for the company. I think that's illegal. So they are not employees. We give them a stipend. It's not like W-2 wages. And we are very careful to make sure they don't do any work for the company so that there could be no confusion about them being employees.
Got it. Yeah. Interesting. Super cool, man.
But we have hired some of them back as full-timers and as interns the following summer. So it's not our primary.
Is that pretty
recruiting.
common? Like part of your hiring pipeline comes from them?
Yeah. I mean, the reality is like, I wish we were growing faster because we could hire more great people than we have openings for right now. Speaking of which, if anyone wants to hire like very entry-level people, but that I can vouch for being really high potential, I'd be happy to put you in touch with some people. Just reach out.
That's really interesting. Jordan and I have been talking about this on Bootstrapped Web. Jordan has been talking about this concept of solutions engineer.
Right. I heard you talking about that. Yeah.
Someone who, and I do think that this is like a role that's emerging, where you need, especially if you're doing like sales-based or high-touch onboarding with customers, you do need someone with like some technical chops to be able to hook up your new customers' stuff so that they can get active and be successful.
Yeah, and actually
it's perfect for like a junior engineer.
I agree. And a decent number of people who have gone through the fellowship, a lot of them are double majoring, and a lot of times they're like, I'm really glad I learned more coding, but I like they look at our developers just sitting behind a computer all day, never talking to anyone. And they're like, I mean, they talk to their colleagues, but not talking to customers or anything. And they're like, that's not for me. So we've actually had a handful of people that they didn't use these words, but they were basically like, I want to be a solutions engineer. I want to use my technical skills, but not be an engineer as my primary job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So interesting. All right, man. Well, we've covered so much ground on this episode and the last one. We could probably talk all day. Hopefully we'll get you back on the show here.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Find some other random topic to rant about.
Absolutely.
Good stuff, man. Well, yeah, it's been exciting, following your podcast and Less Annoying CRM. We'll get everything linked up in the show notes. But yeah, thanks for doing it.
Awesome. Thanks. Have a good one.